I am always pushing for human responsibility. Given that chimpanzees and many other animals are sentient and sapient, then we should treat them with respect. Jane Goodall, one of the world's leading primatologists from the time she arrived in Gombe Stream National Park in 1960 until now, has led a campaign to preserve the environment and eliminate poverty. Through her studies, she has shown commonalities between species and shown a commitment to respect our delicate environment. Her strong but empathetic leadership in these areas will increase the chance that her legacy will live on as others follow in her footsteps. Starting at a young age, Jane Goodall had always been fascinated with Africa and what secrets lie within. Born Valerie Jane Morris Goodall in 1934 to parents Margaret, a successful novelist, and Mortimer, an engineer. When Jane was but a year old, her father gave her a toy chimpanzee named Jubilee. Jubilee ignited in Jane the burning desire to learn more. In 1939, when World War II erupted in England, 8-year-old Jane, her 4-year-old sister Judith, and her family moved to Basildon on the east coast of London. Her father was a soldier in both the First and Second World Wars. To ease the burden, Jane began reading her favorite books, Dr. Dolittle and Tarzan, fueling her love of nature.
In 1957, she went with a school friend to Kenya and stayed on her friend's parents' farm, and that was actually the very first time that she had been to Africa.
Finally, she set sail and landed in Mombasa on April 2, 1957. While there, a friend suggested, if you're interested in animals, you must meet Louis Leakey, the well-known archaeologist and paleontologist who made the important discovery in the Olduvai Gorge of Tanzania of a small four-limbed ancient animal. She met Leakey and was hired as his secretary, but Goodall's love was with the chimpanzees, and soon she was living on a lakeshore in Tanzania with the chimps.
Everybody laughed at me. You'll never do that. Africa's the dark continent's far away, you don't have any money, and you're a girl.
Jane began naming her research animals, rather than assigning them numbers. Personalizing the chimps helped with the identification of the primates, and showed respect for the animals in the process. This practice was frowned upon by many scientific purists as being unscientific, because she was attaching human characteristics to her research subjects. These field studies were some of the first conducted by a lone woman field researcher. Jane's mentor, Dr. Leakey, was ecstatic to get word from Goodall about her discoveries, which defied many long-held beliefs about chimps. She found chimps to be highly intelligent, living in complex social groups called troops. Through her patients, she observed in 1960 chimps not just using tools, but making them, one of the great achievements of 20th century scholarship. From these field observations, Jane also shattered the belief that chimps were vegetarians, having seen chimps eating meat. In 1962, Goodall temporarily left Gombe to attend the University of Cambridge to study ethology, the study of animal behavior, and received her PhD without first receiving a bachelor's degree. She had strong determination in reaching her goal to become a scientific leader in research of chimpanzees in the wild and in captivity. After her first term at Cambridge, Jane headed back to Africa to continue studying and helping the chimpanzees. In August 1963, she published her first article in National Geographic called My Life Among Wild Chimpanzees. This was the beginning of many articles and programs educating the masses about Goodall's studies of chimps in Tanzania.
Up until 1966, her chimpanzee studies progressed well, when unfortunately, 15 chimps got infected with polio. In the end, 6 primates died and the rest were disabled for the remainder of their lives. Goodall suspected that the disease had been passed down from humans to chimps. When she and her team learned the cause of this illness, she radioed Leakey, who arranged for a donation of the polio vaccine to be sent to Gombe for humans at the center as well as the chimpanzees. Following this tragedy, in 1967, the Gombe Stream Research Center was taken over by Tanzania National Park, becoming Gombe Stream National Park. It was at this time National Geographic supported the making of Jane Goodall's Wild Chimpanzees, a documentary produced to spread awareness about the chimpanzees in Tanzania. Jane shocked the scientific community in 1971 when her best-selling book, In the Shadow of Man, was published. Scientists like Solly Zuckerman, who had devoted their lives to working with the chimpanzees, were angry that she had so quickly discovered something that many scientists had tried to in years before. Malcolm MacDonald, a politician, saw a flaw in Goodall's speeches. saying that speaking out to an audience about her work with the chimpanzees was direct criticism towards Zuckerman. Tragedy struck again in 1974 with the start of the 4-Year War. The battle between chimps at Gombe was the first recorded long-term war between non-human primates. The chimpanzees began to separate, creating their own troops. Goodall was deeply saddened. Cannibalism among the chimpanzees was observed. This emotional setback didn't last long, because in 1978, Jane founded the Jane Goodall Institute, JGI, for wildlife research, education, and conservation. She wanted to directly help the chimpanzees, while raising awareness about them throughout the world. Goodall's research with the chimps has led to a legacy in this field of lab work and medical research. Chimps share many similarities with humans.
We have found that after all, there isn't a sharp line dividing humans from the rest of the animal kingdom, as we find animals doing things that we, in our arrogance, used to think was just human.
Spurred by a conference between the National Institute for Health, NIH, and the Humane Society of the United States in July of 1990, the Jane Goodall Institute partnered with several other scientific researchers to form the Committee for Conservation and Care of Chimpanzees. The same year, in 1990, Chimps So Like Us, an HBO documentary about Jane Goodall's work, was produced and nominated for an Academy Award. A year later, Goodall's empathy went further in provoking the issue of chimps in captivity by helping get the Great Ape Protection Act reintroduced in 2009, protecting lab research primates from invasive research. Her legacy lives on around the world in many ways through the continued work of her foundation. The JGI has key areas of conservation which guide their work, including protecting chimps, improving economic and physical health of communities, providing environmental education. It has created 2 important programs, Roots and Shoots, a youth-oriented conservation program, and Lake Tanganyika Catchment Reforestation and Education Project. Take care.
10,000 trees every year are planted around in Tanzania and Uganda, where this is a huge project at this moment. And what we see is that slowly small spots of land or natural habitat for chimpanzees are restored.
During her appointment to the UN, one of the worst fires in decades swept through Gombe in 2004. At one time, there were over 1 million chimps living in parts of Africa. Now, only about 250,000 have been recorded. In Central Africa, the bushmeat trade continues to grow, using illegal and endangered chimpanzees, elephants, and gorillas. 25% of chimpanzees in Uganda have been getting caught in illegal snares. Veterinarian Peter Appel from the Jane Goodall Institute has been working to stop this process. Today, Jane is 80 years old. She is encouraging people to do their part to make the world a better place for people, animals, and the environment we all share. In addition, she continues to pass on her legacy by spending most of her days speaking to students about her research with the chimpanzees, including inspiring young girls to embrace science and technology.
She kind of was much different and led a lot of women to do careers that they never thought they would, especially in science and technology.
Jane has remained the director of research in Gombe since 1967. Since then, the number of chimpanzees in Africa has dropped due largely to poaching and loss of habitat. Jane Goodall changed the lives of many primates, and more specifically chimpanzees. Her long-term concerns about where science has gone wrong is summed up by her simple belief, I think only when our clever brain and our human heart work together in harmony can we achieve our full potential. Her leadership as a scientist, activist, and inspiring educator of environmental stewardship has left a lasting legacy. Her vision has grown into a worldwide mission to inspire people to make a difference for all living things. As with any legacy, hers will be passed on to those who come after her, following her path in their own way. When I look back over my life, it's almost as if there was a plan laid out for me. From the little girl who was so passionate about animals who longed to go to Africa, and whose family couldn't afford to put her through college. Everyone laughed at my dreams. Jane Goodall.